Welcome to Beyond Incredible. I'm Ashley Nicole. Today's date is May 23rd, 2014, and we're broadcasting live from the downtown Windsor Business Accelerator in the BizX Lounge, located at 720 Olette Ave. Tonight's show, we have a special guest. It's Enver Villamizar. Did I do it? Villamizar. And we're going to be speaking about the upcoming election. My co-host, Shay Rachelle, is here, of course, wearing her huge...
Yes.
Her huge stuff.
Hi, everybody.
So, Enver, do you want to give us an intro into the election?
Sure. So the election was called on May 7th. Usually it's about a 28-day election period.
Right.
The vote will actually take place June 12th. The polls for voting are on June 12th, but you can also vote in advance starting May 31st. You have to be 18 years and over to vote.
Yeah.
How's this sound? You have to be 18 years and older to vote, Canadian citizen,
Thank you.
and resident in Ontario.
You have to be 18 years old and a resident of Ontario in order to vote.
Yep. So
yes.
for example, just so your viewers may know, if you're a student and you've said just come to Windsor to go to school or anywhere else, as long as you've been there for about a week, that's considered your permanent residence, as long as you can show that that's where you're going to school.
Right, right. Okay. It's good to know, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is your union's position in this election?
So just briefly to introduce our union, I'm from the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, so that's the union representing secondary school teachers as well as educational assistants, child and youth workers, and many other education workers who work in both the elementary and secondary sectors.
Right.
So we in Windsor are called District 9, so we represent all the teachers and education workers in this area. We're about 1,200. And the position we're taking is that, if you may not have heard, in 2011 the government passed a bill called Bill 115. The Liberals and the PCs passed it.
Right.
And the government used it to impose contracts onto us. So instead of negotiating with us and coming to a mutually beneficial agreement, they just said, well, we want to take out $2 billion from education. If you don't agree voluntarily, we're going to impose it. So this bill was used to basically violate our collective bargaining rights, and then to say that we have no way to appeal it. That once it's imposed, that's it.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was our experience. So we're coming to this general election saying that we need to hold the government accountable, because if we don't, they're going to do it again to other workers.
Yeah, they will.
And we want to kind of set a precedent that citizens should hold governments to account for violations of rights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I guess in a nutshell, what we're calling on our members to do is to get 3 other people, each of them, in Windsor West, Windsor, Tecumseh, and Essex, to elect the NDP as a way to defeat the Liberals and PCs. They were the ones who passed that bill. And we think that this will not only hold them accountable, but also the NDP, by saying that teachers and education workers stand up for their rights and you should respect them.
For sure.
Absolutely. Now, we have a PowerPoint slide for that, I do believe. So
this is just kind of an intro so people know. Right now there's 107 seats. You need 54 seats for any party to have full control of the government for 4 years.
Okay.
Currently it's a minority situation, which means no one party has a majority, right? The Liberals are the closest with 49 seats. They only need 5. PC's next, they need 17, and the NDP needs 33. So our position is we want to keep a minority situation. That way no government has a majority and is able to really control everything for 4 years. We want them to be forced to negotiate with us and with one another.
Absolutely. Now, do you think it is realistic that the NDP can get elected in Windsor West?
If we go to slide number 3, I brought some data with me to kind of show that it definitely is possible based on what we've kind of experienced already. So next slide, actually. No, that's the one previous, one after. There you go. Okay, so in the last general election, the Liberals were 1 seat shy of a majority. Okay, so they needed 1 seat.
Right.
They basically, I don't want to say paid off, but essentially paid off a member of the other party, the PCs, to quit her job. They gave her a better position in the government, and they thought that then that would allow them to take that seat in an election and they would have a majority, right? So that was Kitchener-Waterloo, which is the slide you see up there. So we got involved. That was right when they were attacking our rights, and we went to the electorate. Now, if you can leave that slide up, that would be great, because that one. So we went to that by-election in Kitchener-Waterloo and explained to people and said, listen, deny the Liberals a majority. They want to use this election to get a majority to take power, not to defend anyone's interests, and they're going to use it to attack us and public education, healthcare.
Right.
So we said, use your vote to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the results,
The next slide.
no, same slide.
Same slide.
So before, the PCs had 21,000, Liberals 17,000, NDP far 8,000, pretty far away.
Yeah.
We went in saying defeat the Liberals and PCs. We didn't even tell people what we thought they should do. If you look at the end result, the NDP went up by 10,000 votes. Both the Liberals and PCs dropped. Very historic. It denied the government its majority. After that, the Premier resigned and 4 other key ministers resigned.
Was that so when Jack Layton was alive?
No, he had passed away.
Right before that.
He passed away before that. So he passed away right after the 2011 federal election. So yeah. So if we go to the next slide. So after that, the 5 resignations, there was 5 more by-elections.
Okay.
So Windsor-Tecumseh, we did the same thing. We told our members and the public, defeat the Liberals and PCs, hold them accountable for attacking workers' rights. If you look, same thing. NDP ended up winning by 3,000 votes. If you go to one more slide there. In London West, this was a Conservative riding federally. Liberals had owned this riding for many years. If you look at the Liberal vote after the by-election, they lost 16,000 votes.
They lost?
They lost
Wow.
16,000 votes. NDP went up by 6,000. They won that riding. So those were our experiences showing that the electorate really resonates. When they hear the argument, don't vote for a party per se, vote for your rights, and this is a way you can do it.
Yeah.
They switched. So the last slide, the most recent by-election was in Niagara Falls. That just happened this year.
Okay.
And this was Tim Hudak, the head of the PC party's
Right, okay.
hometown. He was from Fort Erie, right?
Yeah.
So they were telling us, oh, he's unbeatable there. The only option is the Liberals, because if you look, their votes were 16,000 each, very close. We went in and gave the same argument. We said, even if you're a Liberal, vote to defend your rights. And again, same result. And to have that happen in Tim Hudak's hometown really sent a message that people aren't going to be blackmailed and that people don't support the idea of destroying unions and destroying the public sector.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we're coming into this election, on a high note, saying that we can also do this in Windsor West as a way to take away a Liberal seat and prevent them from getting that majority that they really want.
Right.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about the PC's proposals to cut 100,000 public sector jobs, especially teachers and educational workers, in order to create 1 million jobs and pay the debt and deficit?
Well, first of all, I would say it's fraud. It's not that it's not realistic. It's a total spin job. So Hudak, who was in Mike Harris's government, when they slashed and burned and cut all kinds of services and said that this was to pay the debt and deficit, by the end of that 8 years of Mike Harris, the debt and deficit were bigger.
Really?
The difference was that many social programs were privatized. Harris's wife now runs a private nursing company that makes money off of healthcare. So Hudak's claim that he's going to pay down the debt and deficit by cutting public social programs, it's a fraud. What he wants to do is cut public sector workers so they're not unionized, they don't have pensions, they don't have good paying jobs, move it into the private sector. So for example, you can go to a private school if you've got the money, you can get a great psychologist if you've got the money, you can get all kinds of things if you're willing to pay for it, and then have someone make money off of it, rather than it being a public
So it's kind of like the rich are getting richer, but the poor are getting poorer.
Exactly.
Very much so. And the other thing he's saying, which is really untrue, is that public sector workers don't create value, that it only in the private sector. It's not true. Like when we educate, so I'm a teacher, when we educate young people, that's adding value to those kids and then into the economy, because they work, they produce all kinds of new ideas and products. The problem is that that value isn't realized because they don't tax these massive companies enough that that value can be put back in. And they don't say that the youth that are educated, you know, there should be some return into the economy from these big companies for that, right? They just think they should be paid, and there's no problem. So we don't agree with that. We think we produce value. All doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, they all contribute to the economy. Hudak wants to make it appear as if that's a waste of money, but if you give it to someone to make money off of it, profit, oh, then it's somehow creating value, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you're concerned about the PC's proposals, what about the idea that by calling on people to elect the NDP, you might split the vote in Windsor West and get a Conservative elected?
So that's a real concern for a lot of people. They want to make sure they vote to block Hudak from getting in because of these attacks that he wants to wage in privatization. We think that by defeating both the Liberals and PCs, that the electorate will respond to that. Because if you ask them to vote for the Liberals, they know that the Liberals attack workers' rights and also want to privatize and cut social programs. They may not say so in such an inflammatory manner like Hudak, but they have a similar agenda.
Right.
So we think that the way to defeat that common agenda that they both kind of have is by defeating them both. And the way that in Windsor West you can do that is electing the NDP. So our strategy isn't just to call on people to vote, but to get 3 other people to do that. If 3 other people actually take that up for each person, then there won't be a split vote. It'll be overwhelmingly NDP, and both the Liberals and PCs will be held to account, at least in this riding.
Yeah. Okay, now what about people who might say they're all the same, so why vote?
Yeah.
Normally,
yeah. So I'm representing those people. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a real concern. We're not saying that any of the parties are going to solve the problems facing the people. We think that our main stand is that people should get involved.
Right.
And by doing this, we can actually hold all of them to account, right? Because right now there's no way to hold them accountable. They do whatever they want, and then come election time, they say, oh, well, we didn't mean that. They hand out some money, and then things change.
Exactly.
We're saying we have a way to actually say that you can make your vote mean something. It doesn't mean you necessarily support the party that you're voting for. It may mean you do, but it doesn't have to. It means you're voting for your rights and against governments having a majority.
Right.
Absolutely. How does that make you feel, Shay?
I mean,
Does it
definitely.
give you a little bit of an understanding now?
It does, and I'm from BC originally,
Okay.
so I am kind of like the student today, and you're teaching me a little bit about the way
The
politics
Ontario
work.
system.
Exactly, there's a lot of different things involved. I mean, I kind of watch a lot of American news,
Right.
so I kind of see what they're dealing with, and it sounds familiar what Hudak is talking about with the 1 million jobs.
Yeah.
I've heard that before, and it's not working out so well for them, so
Right.
I kind of hope it's different for Ontario because they really need it. But I was going to say that people really need to do their research. Just thinking, oh, okay, he likes chocolate, I like chocolate, I'm going to vote for him. You really need to do your research. Even being young, you might say, whatever, it's just one vote and all that. I've thought about that before.
Well, it's the future too.
Yeah,
right? Like, we have to think about our
one day you're going to
kids
get
in the
old, you're going to have
future
kids, yeah. So, I mean, we pay taxes. I mean, I pay taxes, so I know what it's like to get more taxes taken away than I feel I should. And that's part of voting. You vote for that. There's a lot of things you vote for that affect you. And you don't think it does, but it definitely does.
Oh, I'm
Sure.
Yeah.
And typically people think that your vote doesn't mean anything, right? And
Yeah.
in many cases, if you don't vote for the party that wins, your vote doesn't actually mean anything,
Yeah,
right?
and you're like, see,
In
I didn't
practice,
vote. Look what happened.
exactly.
Nothing. Yeah.
So what we're trying to say is let's create a situation where even if your vote doesn't lead to a person winning or losing, you make it a statement. And that
Yeah.
statement is that you don't want governments to dictate to people. You want
Yeah,
people
they're
to be able to
bullies.
defend their rights. You don't want bullying.
It
Bullies.
kind of reminds me of the last federal election when everybody was complaining about Stephen Harper. Well, Stephen Harper got back in because nobody voted. You
Right.
know, he had the majority vote, did he not? So
Yeah.
because nobody voted, all these people were complaining and nobody voted.
Yeah.
So he got in again, and here we are complaining still.
Yeah,
but
you
if
want to
we
have an
would've went and
opinion.
voted,
You got to help, right?
know?
Yeah.
And it's
Help
hard
the
because if
problem.
people don't think there's anyone to vote for, that they may be not voting not because they don't care, but because they're saying they're not going to represent me. So we're trying to create a space where you don't have to say that the NDP represents you. We're almost using that vote to take a stand more broadly, right? Which is something new because typically you say, well, I don't really support them, but because I don't like the other guys, I'm going to vote for them. And
Yeah.
that's not really democratic in my opinion. You're kind of plugging your nose. We're saying do it, vote for them, but not for the reasons why they say. Do it for your own
Yes,
reasons,
yes.
right?
Now, some say that unions shouldn't be involved in politics. What is your response?
My response is, first of all, I don't think anyone should tell anyone who to vote for, right? I think that's a matter of your individual conscience, what you believe. But in today's circumstance, we don't really have a way to vote that represents our interests. Say, for example, no one's getting up there who's in the legislature now saying, I'll defend workers' rights, right? So we're trying to create a situation where we're not telling people who to vote for. We're saying in order to defend our rights as workers, forget what party you support or not, as working people, this is a way we can do it by keeping the government in a minority where they can't impose things. If you look at Harper, he's got a majority and he's doing whatever he wants. Everyone, it seems, is against him, but he just says, well, I won the election, so be it. We don't want that repeated. And we don't want that repeated in Ontario where the government can just say, well, you know, you elected us, so we're going to lay off everybody, even though no one else voted. We're going to do it because you gave us a mandate, right? So I would say that we're not telling people how they should vote. We're giving them a way to defend their own rights. And some parties don't like that, but it's because it goes against what they want.
I wonder
Not
why.
because they don't
Yeah.
want us to be political and get our members involved. It's because they think that workers should have no organized way to express themselves, that they should just kind of be, have to succumb to all the marketing and have no way to think for themselves.
Yeah, they
right?
can't be dictators anymore, so
Yeah.
they don't like that.
Yeah. So how can people get more information on your position?
They can visit District 9, OSSTF District 9's website.
Okay.
So if you just Google OSSTF District 9, we've got our flyers up there, some information. If they want to get information on voting in general, we make votingeasy.ca is Elections Ontario's website. Yeah, those are probably the best ways.
Now, do you just have to be a taxpayer to be able to vote?
You have to be a citizen,
A citizen?
a resident,
yeah.
also resident in obviously Ontario. There's a certain
Yeah, for how long? I was
period
going
of
to say I'm
time.
4 years, so I don't know.
So
how long.
you're for sure you're fine. I
Okay.
think it's like, a certain number of months, or that you
Right.
can prove it's your permanent residence.
Right,
so
yeah,
if you're a
the health card
student,
or
for example,
something,
that
yeah.
would be something.
Okay.
And yeah, and 18 and above, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then in this area, it's Windsor West is the riding, which is basically west of Walker.
Right.
Windsor Tecumseh is east of Walker to Tecumseh.
Okay, so I'm in Windsor West then.
Yeah, and
I'm
then
in
Essex
Walker.
is everything above, right? And there's some, on Walker it kind of shimmies, so if you go to the Elections Ontario website, they'll tell you, you can type in your postal code and it'll say exactly where you can vote.
Okay.
Good to know.
Okay. Now, the Liberals have been kind of in charge of Ontario for about 30 years now. How do you think that they've done? Like,
Not 30 years. So
30?
no, they've been in charge since 2003, I believe, so about 10.
Okay.
Before that was Mike Harris.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
got some wrong information.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's
My
okay.
apologies.
That's why we have these shows and have
Yeah.
discussion, right? Report card. I would say that they came to power because people really disliked Mike Harris and what he did, right? So I think people were looking for a way to block him, and they brought in the Liberals.
Okay.
The Liberals have essentially carried on the general direction that Harris went in, but in a nicer kind of way.
Right.
And so I think that they've been able to kind of confuse people about that until 2011 when they launched Bill 115. At least from our perspective, it really showed that even though they talked a good game, they had no problem violating people's rights when they wanted to take money out of social
Yeah.
programs. So
Yeah.
I think that our experience has been now that we have to defend our own rights. We can't leave it in any party's hands to think they're going to do it for us.
Oh,
All
no.
these parties seem to think that their only job is to take money from social programs and pay big companies or pay the debt and deficit. They don't see a way to create revenue through public means.
Right.
So we're trying to say that public education should be invested in, not cut back in. It's an investment in the kids, in the future.
Right.
And by cutting back from it, you're actually hurting the learning conditions in the schools. You're hurting kids who have special needs. You're not
Yeah.
you're not building anything, which is what governments kind of should be doing. So whether or not the Liberals are good or bad, we don't want to permit them to carry on violating people's rights. We need to hold them to account. If they get a minority government, fine. Hopefully by defeating them in Windsor West, we'll have sent a message that they should not do what they did to teachers and education workers, or
Yeah.
anyone else for that matter.
Yeah. No, did
Don't
you go
mess.
to public school, Shay? Or
I did a little bit of both, actually. I did homeschooling and public school in BC.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, pretty much all in Montreal as well. So I did a bit of French immersion there. Yeah, so I don't know how the schools are here.
I
What
went
would
to
you
public
say?
school, but it was all it all changed. I think by the time I was finished public school, it was like I want to say the year 2000 is when I finished grade 8. So
Yeah.
so everything kind of started changing after that, you know.
Yeah.
And
That
it
was
wasn't
towards the
really-
end of Mike Harris's period, and then the Liberals kind of coming
Yeah,
in.
yeah, because I remember it was like all good, and then all of a sudden there was all these issues, and I didn't really understand because I wasn't involved. I didn't really care to know. It was just, change
Right.
the channel,
Right.
teenager,
Yes,
typical teenager,
exactly.
But there seems to be a lot more teenagers involved nowadays. It seems like it's a very it's educated. Like a lot of teenagers are educated.
Right.
Plus, I think a lot of kids are involved in politics, but not necessarily election politics. So then that's the problem. People say, oh, the youth aren't political. Well, they are kind of in their own projects and in their own world of defending their rights and things,
Right.
but not necessarily in voting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they're not political.
That's
The kids
true.
in my classes who I talk to really are concerned about things. They don't think their vote means anything, but they're concerned they want to do something. So the challenge is, how do we create a space where youth can express their opinions other than just by voting, right?
Yes.
There has to be more mechanisms where people can have a say.
Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, if you mentioned report cards earlier. Shay, do you want to ask this question?
Okay. If you were to give Kathleen, what do you say, Wynn, a report card, how would you grade her on the job she's done so far? Oh, this is an interesting question.
I would say, well, she's not elected actually, so it's
Okay.
hard to grade her because she was appointed by.
She just kind of hopped in, didn't she? She's like
did.
a substitute.
She's like a
Stuck in
substitute,
there.
so it's hard to grade someone who we didn't choose to put in that position,
Yeah,
right?
that question actually came from Mike Thomas from the Convergence Report. Actually, he asked me. He did put that down, so I thought it was a fun one to ask.
I would probably say that she has not fulfilled the
So
requirements of the curriculum.
Not satisfactory.
Yeah, I wouldn't give her a letter grade. I would say that she has not fulfilled her duties as premier.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what percentage would that be? Maybe 15, 20?
That incomplete.
Incomplete. Total
So no
incomplete?
percentage. She has not.
She
fulfilled
failed
her
the
duties.
exam. She missed exams. Didn't show up for exams.
Exactly. Exactly.
Midterms.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yep. She didn't even show.
So is there anything else we need to know about this election? Or did we cover it all?
I think we covered quite a bit. I would just say make sure people get out and vote. That you can actually vote today if you wanted to, if you
Okay.
go to the returning office.
Okay.
If you don't want to go to the returning office, you can wait till the advance polls, and if you don't want to wait till then, or if you can't wait, June 12th is the actual
Yes.
voting day.
Okay.
And I think polls close at 9. It's actually the opening day of the World Cup.
Yes.
So if you're a
Uh-oh,
soccer
guys.
fan, make sure you vote in advance
Yeah.
so that you don't miss it watching Brazil, Croatia play
Right.
the opening game.
I will not be watching that. I'm not a big soccer fan.
Neither am I.
I don't know
It's
why.
nice. It gets the world united and everything. It's
Absolutely,
interesting,
but-
but you know, I mean,
You know,
good.
there's so many people on the stands there. Like, there's like 100,000 people watching soccer. Why not be at the voting booth?
Yeah.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
The game's
Hopefully
last
they'll all
forever,
Hudak,
so
'cause seriously, honestly, my whole thing is to just stop Hudak because he has some pretty crazy ideas.
what would you grade him?
Hudak? He hasn't yet really
The minus.
been in power, so it's hard to give him any grade. I would
Yeah.
say.
How about on his campaigning skills? How would
on
you
his
do that?
campaigning skills? I would say he's a great campaigner. The problem
Oh,
is,
yeah, I saw his
everything he
Facebook
says-
page.
None of what he says is actually valid. It's fraud.
Yeah,
so
you can.
He's really
I
good
can
at
tell.
making
I don't know
something
what
that's
he's
fraudulent.
doing.
Manipulative,
Yeah.
manipulative person.
But I think because of the by-elections, we really put a fork in his chicken, because he tried to make it look like this is a perfect, and I've done everything, I'm ready to rule
Yeah.
the province, and we really showed that the electorate don't support that. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Do you know? Are you going to vote this year?
Well, I mean, I learned something today for sure, so I'm gonna definitely do some research so I know kind of who I'm gonna vote for. But I'm excited about it. I'm gonna look into it.
I'm
I'll
gonna
let you
vote.
guys know.
I vote all the time. So.
Yeah.
And get 3 other people. Get 3
Okay.
other people.
I'll
That's the
recruit some
trick.
people.
You could be one of my
There
3.
you go.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
she could be one
Yeah,
of
I'm
yours.
a newbie,
that's
so
fine.
I'll try to recruit
And
somebody.
Alex could be number 2.
Are you allowed to vote, Alex?
Yes, he is.
Oh, you're in Canada. I'm just joking. So that's it for our show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Next week we'll be back.
Yeah.
We'll be back
I'll
on
be
Friday.
here. Yeah.
Friday. I don't know what we're
Yes,
doing.
The day
Weekend.
after the election.
The day after the
We
election.
can do a post-election wrap-up.
No, we're gonna be. What's next Friday? The
Oh, sorry,
30th?
not next Friday. I was thinking Friday the 13th.
Oh, that's in a
June.
few weeks.
Oh,
Oh, Alex just got a slap in the ass by Arthur.
lovely.
Nice.
It's the weekend.
It's
Whoop, whoop.
TGIF.
Early party.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week. The end of the month TJF is happening here at the Accelerator. So
What's that?
I
Is
don't
that
know what's
literally a
happening
party?
tonight. Apparently, that's why Alex got a slap in the ass. Treated like a Mexican prostitute. No, I'm just joking. I'm so just joking. We'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
Go vote. It's really, really important. Every vote does count. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, NOXTROM. At NOXTROM. You can follow us on Twitter at NOXTROM. You can find us on Facebook at NOXTROM Digital Media. You can find me at Ashley Nicole. My Twitter tag is at ElectroAshNY. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring NOXTROM, we do have sponsorship packages available. You can email Alejandro at alexd@noxtrom.com. And make sure you tune in for Betty Goodell. She's coming up next. She has some interesting things to show us, an interesting video, and then the Convergence Report with Mike Thomas, who I'm sure might have something to say about this show. Thank you for watching, and have yourselves a good weekend.
Yes.